An all-girls Catholic school vanished in 1943. 36 years later, renovation crew found human remains and bone fragments. The sledgehammer struck the basement wall with a dull thud. Dust billowed through the beam of Frank Donovan's flashlight as he wiped sweat from his brow. April 17, 1979, marked his second day renovating the abandoned St. Philomena's Academy for Girls. The old Catholic school had stood empty since 1943, its stone walls gradually crumbling into the misty landscape of Blackwood Falls, New York. "One more should do it," Frank muttered, swinging the sledgehammer again. The wall cracked, then collapsed inward, revealing a space where no space should exist. Frank's flashlight beam cut through decades of undisturbed darkness. "Hey, Mike, I found something weird," he called to his foreman. As dust settled, Frank stepped cautiously into the hidden chamber. His boot crunched on something that wasn't concrete. He lowered his flashlight. The beam illuminated a fragment of bone, yellowed with age. Beside it lay a tarnished silver crucifix, its chain entwined with what appeared to be a small finger bone. His light traced the outline of a school uniform, now reduced to tattered cloth. "Jesus Christ," Frank whispered, his voice strangled. In the far corner, a small tin box lay partially buried beneath debris. But what made Frank's blood freeze was the wall before him. Scratched into the concrete were 5 desperate words. "God forgive them, they knew." Frank stumbled backward, colliding with Mike, who had just entered. What the hell? Mike's flashlight joined Frank's, revealing more horrifying details. Dozens of bone fragments scattered throughout the small chamber, the remains of what could only be human beings. Frank's scream echoed through the abandoned halls of St. Philomena's, a sound that many would later say awakened something that had lain dormant for 36 years. The local newspaper from May 12, 1943, told a different story. Its bold headline proclaimed, "Entire Catholic School Vanishes Without a Trace." The accompanying article detailed how 42 girls and 8 nuns had simply disappeared one foggy spring morning, leaving meals half-eaten and beds perfectly made. For 36 years, Blackwood Falls had whispered about the mystery of St. Philomena's, the school that vanished into thin air as though spirited away by some supernatural force. But as Detective Marcus Reed stood in that hidden chamber hours after Frank's discovery, staring at the human remains that clearly had never left the building, he uttered words that would change everything. "My God, they never left after all." If you enjoy fictional mysteries like this one, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. You won't want to miss what happens next. Detective Marcus Reed wasn't supposed to be in Blackwood Falls. At 45, his transfer from New York City to this small upstate town was meant to be a chance to escape the nightmares, the unsolved cases that had haunted him for years. Yet here he stood in the basement of St. Philomena's Academy, facing what would become the most disturbing mystery of his career. "What do we know so far?" Reed asked, kneeling beside the bone fragments. His fingers, protected by latex gloves, gently lifted a small silver locket from the debris. Dr. Sarah Winters, the county medical examiner, looked up from her preliminary examination. "Human remains, definitely. Multiple individuals. The sealed environment actually preserved them better than you'd expect. From the degradation pattern, I'd estimate they've been here since the 1940s. "Matching the 1943 disappearance," Reed murmured. "Potentially," Winters replied cautiously. "I'll need to run more tests. We've made advances in forensic anthropology that should help us identify these remains despite the time that's passed." Mike Wheeler, the construction foreman, hovered anxiously near the entrance. "We had no idea. The renovation plans never showed any hidden rooms." Reed turned to him. "Why now?" This building has been abandoned for nearly 4 decades. Why renovate it now? Wheeler shifted uncomfortably. Mayor Blackwood pushed it through the town council 3 months ago, right after his father took ill. Said it was time to put the past behind us, turn this place into something useful, a community center. After 36 years of letting it rot, Reed noted, his voice flat. Convenient timing. Dr. Winters called Reed over to examine something in the corner. A small tin box, tarnished but intact, lay half buried in the rubble. Reed carefully opened it to find a leather-bound book inside, protected from the worst of the moisture and decay. "It's a journal," Reed said gently, opening the fragile cover. On the first readable page, elegant handwriting declared, "Property of Lillian Harper, St. Philomena's Academy for Girls, 1943. "Detective," Dr. Winters said quietly, "look at this entry." Reed squinted at the faded ink. Something is wrong at St. Philomena's. Sister Catherine is gone, and Sister Agnes grows stranger by the day. A chill ran through him. The dead were beginning to speak. Outside the school, a crowd had gathered. News traveled fast in small towns. Reed spotted Mayor Richard Blackwood speaking urgently with the police chief, Thomas Jenkins. Their conversation ceased abruptly when they noticed Reed approaching. "Detective Reed," the mayor said with forced pleasantness, "I understand you're taking lead on this unfortunate discovery." "That's right," Reed replied, studying the mayor's face. Richard Blackwood was in his 60s, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting an image of distinguished authority. "I'd like to ask why this renovation was suddenly approved after 36 years, the mayor smiled thinly. "Progress, Detective. Federal funding became available for historical preservation projects. The town council voted unanimously." "Interesting that it coincided with your father's illness," Reed observed. Blackwood's smile faltered momentarily. "Pure coincidence. Now, if you'll excuse me." Police Chief Jenkins cleared his throat. "We should contain this situation quickly. No need to alarm the town unnecessarily." Reed caught the warning in Jenkins' tone. "With all due respect, Chief, we may have found the remains of 50 people who disappeared in 1943. This isn't something to contain. It's something to investigate." The mayor and police chief exchanged glances. "Of course," Blackwood conceded. "Just remember that St. Philomena's has been a sensitive subject in our community for generations. Some wounds are best left undisturbed." As they walked away, Reed turned to find an elderly man watching him intently from across the street. When their eyes met, the man quickly disappeared into the gathering crowd. Back inside, Reed carefully placed Lillian Harper's journal in an evidence bag. The preservation team would need to work carefully to restore the damaged pages, but if anyone could tell the story of what happened at St. Philomena's, it would be her. The next morning, Reed began the painstaking process of interviewing Blackwood Falls' oldest residents. Most doors closed in his face. Those who did speak offered only variations of the same response. Some things are better left in the past. By midday, frustration had set in. Reed sat in his car reviewing his notes when a tap on his window startled him. An elderly woman with bright, intelligent eyes gestured for him to roll down the window. "You're asking about St. Philomena's," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am. And you are?" "Eleanor Wilson. I'm 52 years old, and I was supposed to be at St. Philomena's the day everyone disappeared." She glanced around nervously. "Not here? Meet me at my home, 415 Sycamore Lane, 3 o'clock. Before Reed could respond, she shuffled away with surprising speed. At precisely 3 o'clock, Reed knocked on Eleanor Wilson's door. The house was a meticulously maintained Victorian, with lace curtains and a well-tended garden. Eleanor answered immediately, as though she'd been waiting by the door. "Come in quickly," she urged, ushering him into a sitting room filled with antique furniture and the scent of lavender. "Tea?" No, thank you, Reed said, taking a seat. You mentioned you were supposed to be at St. Philomena's? Eleanor nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she poured herself a cup. I was 16. I had scarlet fever the week before the disappearance. My parents kept me home. All my friends were there. Martha, Jane, Rebecca. Her voice broke. All gone. What do you remember about the school? Eleanor's eyes grew distant. It wasn't like other Catholic schools. Sister Agnes ran it like her personal kingdom. The discipline was unusual. In what way? Girls who misbehaved disappeared for days. When they returned, they were different. Quiet. Obedient. Eleanor shuddered. Sister Agnes called it spiritual reformation. Reed leaned forward. And no one questioned this? It was wartime, Detective. Fathers were fighting overseas. Mothers were working in factories. Many families were grateful for any place that would take their daughters. She paused. Besides, Sister Agnes had powerful friends in town. The mayor then, Franklin Blackwood, Richard's father, he protected her. Why? Eleanor glanced toward the window. Sister Agnes promised things. Protection for the town's sons in the war. Special blessings. She lowered her voice. Some said she practiced older rituals beneath the Catholic trappings, rituals that required sacrifice. Reed felt a chill. Did you ever witness anything like that? No, but my friend Lillian wrote to me about strange happenings. Girls being taken to the basement chapel at night, chanting in Latin that wasn't from any mass she recognized. Eleanor stood suddenly. Wait here. She disappeared into another room, returning with a small wooden box. From it, she extracted a yellowed envelope. The last letter I received from Lillian Harper 3 days before the disappearance. Reed carefully opened the fragile paper. The handwriting matched the journal. Dear Eleanor, he read aloud, I pray your health improves soon, though perhaps it's a blessing you remain away from St. Philomena's for now. Something terrible is happening here. Sister Catherine tried to stop it, and now she's gone. Mary and I have discovered a hidden passage behind the chapel altar. What we saw there, I cannot write it, even to you. Sister Agnes believes her rituals will help win the war, but at what cost? I fear for all of us. If anything happens, know that I tried to save them. Your friend always, Lillian. Reed looked up from the letter. Have you shared this with anyone? I tried, back in '43. No one believed me. They preferred the mystery of a vanishing school to the possibility of something more sinister. Eleanor clutched his arm suddenly. The original investigation was a sham, Detective. Mayor Blackwood and Police Chief Jenkins Sr. controlled everything. They kept federal investigators away, claiming jurisdiction issues. They limited the search to a few days. They never even brought in dogs. She paused. Find the truth, Detective. After all these years, they deserve that much. The next day, Reed visited the town's newspaper archives, hoping to find more information about the disappearance. To his surprise, several issues from April and May 1943 were missing. That's odd, said the librarian when he inquired. Those should be here. Reed next tried the county records office, where he discovered that St. Philomena's had been built in 1892 on land with a disturbing history. Before the school, the property had been the site of witch trials in the 1700s. 7 women had been executed there. More troublingly, Reed found building permits showing extensive renovations to St. Philomena's basement in 1940, authorized by Sister Agnes herself. The plans mentioned a special chapel, but provided no details. As Reed drove back to his hotel, he noticed a black sedan following him. It kept its distance, but remained behind him for several turns. When Reed abruptly pulled over, the sedan continued past. He caught only a glimpse of the driver, a middle-aged man in a suit. That evening, Reed spread Lillian's journal pages across his hotel room desk. Thanks to the protective tin box, many pages remained intact, though others were damaged beyond recovery. A conservation expert from the State University was working to stabilize and restore the document, but Reed had enough to begin piecing together the events of 1943. March 12, 1943. Sister Catherine disappeared last night. Her room was empty this morning, and Sister Agnes told us she left to care for an ailing aunt. But Mary saw something different. She saw men taking Sister Catherine through the garden after midnight. When she told Sister Agnes, she was punished with a day of silence. I don't understand what's happening, but I'm afraid. March 20th, 1943. 3 more girls were taken for special prayer sessions in the basement chapel tonight: Rebecca, Sarah, and Elizabeth. They returned at dawn, walking like sleepwalkers. Elizabeth had a bandage on her wrist. When I asked about it, she stared through me as if I weren't there. Mary is terrified. She attends Mass twice daily now, praying for protection. April 2nd, 1943, Mary and I followed Sister Agnes tonight. We discovered a hidden passage behind the chapel altar, concealed by a panel that looks like part of the wall. It leads downward, beneath the school foundations. We heard chanting, not prayers, but something older. Mary recognized some words from her grandmother's Irish folk tales, something about blood and sacrifice bringing protection. We ran before they could discover us. What do you think happened to the girls who attended these special prayer sessions? Share your theories in the comments below. Reed woke to pounding on his hotel room door. Bleary-eyed, he checked his watch. 6:23 a.m. The pounding continued. "Detective Reed," came an urgent voice. "It's Officer Daniels. There's been an incident." Reed opened the door to find a young police officer, face pale. "What's happened?" "It's Eleanor Wilson, sir. She's dead." 20 minutes later, Reed stood in Eleanor's living room. The elderly woman lay on the floor, her teacup shattered beside her. At first glance, it appeared she had suffered a heart attack. "The neighbor found her this morning," Officer Daniels explained. "Came by to drive her to church." Reed surveyed the room. Something felt wrong. Was anything taken? Daniels shrugged. "Hard to say. The place isn't ransacked, but someone searched it," Reed finished, noting the slightly askew drawers and moved cushions, signs only another detective might notice. Carefully. As the medical examiner examined the body, Reed discovered a loose floorboard beneath an ornate rug. Inside the small hiding space was an envelope addressed to "The detective who asks about Saint Philomena's." Reed pocketed it without comment. Later, alone in his car, he opened the envelope. Inside was a faded photograph showing rows of solemn-faced girls in identical uniforms, standing before the imposing facade of St. Philomena's. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, 1943, the last class. Alongside the photo was a newspaper clipping about wartime occult practices in rural communities, with a handwritten note, "Not just rumors." Reed returned to St. Philomena's, where the excavation continued. 2 more hidden chambers had been discovered, each containing human remains. Dr. Winters met him at the entrance, her expression grave. "You need to see this," she said, leading him to a makeshift examination area. On a table lay several bone fragments. "We found cut marks on these remains, not from decomposition or animal activity. These were made by blades, ritualistic patterns." Reed studied the bones. "You're saying these people were part of some ritual sacrifice?" "I'm saying something happened to these people before they died," Winters replied carefully. "Something deliberate." "How have these remains survived so intact after 36 years?" Reed asked. "The chambers were almost hermetically sealed," Winters explained. "Minimal air circulation, consistently cool temperatures, and relatively low humidity created conditions similar to what we find in ancient tombs. Bone degradation was slowed significantly. Plus, the lime mortar used in the walls absorbed moisture, further aiding preservation." Before Reed could respond, a commotion erupted near the building's east wing. A construction worker came running, his face ashen. "We found another room. There's so many of them," The newly discovered chamber was larger than the others. Inside, the remains of at least a dozen individuals lay in a circle around a stone altar. Carved into the altar were symbols, a mixture of Christian iconography and something older, more primal. "What is this place?" whispered Dr. Winters. Reed's phone call to Mary O'Connell's surviving family led him to her elderly cousin, Patrick O'Connell, now living in a nursing home 50 miles away. The old man's room was sparse but neat, Catholic icons adorning the walls. "Mary," Patrick said, his voice quavering with age, "haven't heard that name spoken in years." "She was at St. Philomena's in 1943, Reed prompted. Patrick nodded slowly. "A quiet girl, devout. Her father, my uncle, sent her there after her mother died. Thought the nuns would raise her right." His laugh was bitter. "Instead, they took her away forever." "Did she ever mention problems at the school? A Sister Agnes?" Patrick's rheumy eyes sharpened. "She sent a letter. Just before—" He pointed to a small drawer beside his bed. "In there. Kept it all these years." The letter was similar to Lillian's, but Mary's perspective was different. "Dearest cousin Patrick, I write in great distress. Something unholy has taken root at St. Philomena's. Sister Agnes speaks of sacrifice bringing protection. The fog hides their sins. Lillian and I discovered their secret chapel. What I saw there can only be described as pagan. They use our blood for rituals, claiming it will shield our soldiers overseas. Some girls have already died. Sister Agnes calls them necessary losses. I have prayed for guidance, but I fear God has abandoned this place. If you don't hear from me again, please know I tried to remain faithful to the end. Your loving cousin, Mary." "When did you receive this?" Reed asked. "May 7th, 1943, 3 days before they all vanished." Patrick made quotation marks with his fingers. "I told the police back then. They didn't listen. Said I was a drunk Irish troublemaker." He leaned forward. "Detective, whatever happened at St. Philomena's wasn't supernatural. It was evil, wearing the mask of faith." "Did you keep trying after they dismissed you?" Patrick's face darkened. "For months. Then I got a visit from Chief Jenkins and Mayor Blackwood. They made it clear that continuing to ask questions would result in consequences. I had a family to protect. As Reed's investigation deepened, so did the resistance. Equipment at the excavation site was mysteriously damaged. Evidence disappeared from the police station. Anonymous calls threatened to end his career if he didn't drop the case. Then came the accident. Reed was examining newly discovered chambers when a support beam suddenly collapsed, narrowly missing him but trapping him in the basement for hours. It was no accident. The beam had been deliberately weakened. After being rescued, Reed found his hotel room ransacked. Lillian's journal was gone, but the intruders had missed the copies he'd already made and stored in his car. The journal revealed more about Sister Agnes. She had arrived at St. Philomena's in 1939, appointed by Bishop Williams, who rarely visited the remote school. Before that, she had been part of a secretive religious sect in Europe that blended Catholic rituals with older pagan practices. According to Lillian, Sister Agnes believed these enhanced rituals could provide supernatural protection. As the war intensified, so did Sister Agnes's desperation. The special prayer sessions became more frequent. Girls with no families to check on them disappeared, officially transferred to other schools. Reed discovered that in the months before the mass disappearance, 23 girls had been transferred from St. Philomena's. No records existed of them arriving at other institutions. Most disturbing was Reed's discovery that local officials had helped cover up these disappearances. Mayor Franklin Blackwood had signed transfer papers without question. The police chief, Thomas Jenkins Sr., father of the current chief, had dismissed concerns raised by a few parents. If this story has kept you entertained, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more mysteries. On the journal's last intact pages, Lillian described the final morning, May 10th, 1943. The fog came at dawn, thick as wool. I woke to Sister Margaret gathering girls for an emergency prayer service. Her eyes were wild, frightened. Through my window, I could see nothing but gray mist swallowing the world. Mary and I didn't join the procession. Instead, we followed at a distance as Sister Agnes led everyone to the basement chapel. She wore red robes instead of her habit and carried a silver bowl I'd never seen before. The hidden panel was open. Dozens of candles lit the passage down. We heard Sister Agnes's voice echo up. Today we make the ultimate sacrifice. Today we ensure America's victory. Today we honor the old gods and the new. Some of the younger nuns protested. Sister Margaret cried out, "This is heresy, Agnes! This is murder!" There was a scuffle, the sound of someone falling. Mary clutched my arm, whispering prayers. We had to help them. We crept down the passage to the large chamber with the stone altar. What we saw there will haunt me even in death. The girls were arranged in a circle, drugged or hypnotized, swaying slightly. Several lay on smaller altars around the room, their wrists bound, bleeding into silver bowls. Sister Agnes stood at the center, chanting in a language that hurt my ears. Sister Margaret and two other nuns lay motionless on the floor. Dead or unconscious? I couldn't tell. Mary couldn't bear it. She ran forward, screaming prayers, trying to stop the ritual. I followed, desperate to help. We managed to free 3 of the youngest girls, urging them toward a different passage Mary had discovered earlier. Then Sister Agnes saw us. Her eyes were black, empty. She smiled. "The faithful ones," she said, "your sacrifice will be the most powerful of all." Men appeared, townsmen I recognized, including Mayor Blackwood. They grabbed us. Mary fought wildly, scratching the mayor's face. I bit the hand of the man holding me and broke free, running to a side chamber where I knew there was another exit. But Sister Agnes was waiting. "You've seen too much, child," she said. Then to the men, "Seal her in. This one's blood is tainted with rebellion." They pushed me into this small chamber. I heard Mary screaming as they dragged her away. Then the terrible sound of bricks and mortar. They're sealing me in alive. I write this hoping someone will someday find it and know what happened at St. Philomena's. They are all complicit. Sister Agnes, Mayor Blackwood, the men of the town. The girls are being sacrificed in some twisted ritual meant to protect our soldiers overseas. I hear them sealing other chambers. Mary is praying in one nearby. The air grows thin. If you find this, tell the world what happened here. Tell them we. The journal ended there, the final words trailing off into nothing. Reed sat motionless in his car, parked outside St. Philomena's, as he finished reading. The horror of those final moments settled over him, like the fog that had shrouded the school on its last day. The next piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Frank Donovan, the construction worker who had first discovered the hidden chamber, approached Reed with trembling hands. "I didn't think it mattered," he said, offering a small tin box. "Found it embedded in the wall next to where I found the first remains. Thought it was just trash." Inside was a class ring inscribed with Saint, Philomena's Academy, and the initials TB. "Thomas Blackwood," Reed murmured. "The mayor's father," Frank confirmed. "My grandfather worked for him, said he was a cruel man who thought his money could buy anything, including silence." "Do you know why the renovation was suddenly approved now, after all these years?" Frank hesitated. "Word is that old Franklin Blackwood is dying. Cancer. They say he's been making deathbed confessions to his son. The mayor's been acting strange for months, ever since his father took ill." He thought the evidence would be gone by now, Reed realized. He wanted to demolish the chambers before anyone could discover what really happened. Armed with mounting evidence, Reed approached State Attorney General Helen Martinez, bypassing local authorities entirely. He presented everything, the journal, the letters, the physical evidence, the suspicious deaths and transfers. This goes beyond a local disappearance, Reed argued. This was mass murder, followed by a cover-up that's lasted 36 years. Martinez listened gravely. You understand what you're alleging? That the town's founding families, including the current mayor's father, participated in ritual sacrifice and then fabricated a mass disappearance story? Yes, and that the current generation has worked to maintain that fiction. We have the forensic evidence now. Dr. Winters has confirmed that the bones show ritual markings and several chambers were deliberately sealed with victims inside. What about identification of the remains? After 36 years, can we prove who these people were? Reed nodded. Dr. Winters is using dental records where available. We've also begun collecting DNA samples from surviving family members for comparison. It's a new technique but promising, plus we have personal effects, jewelry, class rings, even name tags on some uniform fragments. Martinez studied the evidence for a long moment. I'll have state police secure the site. No one enters without my authorization. And Detective Reed, watch your back. The next morning, state police descended on Blackwood Falls. Mayor Richard Blackwood was arrested, attempting to flee town. Search warrants were executed on the homes of several prominent citizens. Documents dating back to 1943 were discovered in hidden safes and secret compartments. The excavation of St. Philomena's continued under state supervision. By the end, the remains of all 50 missing persons were recovered. Dental records, personal effects, and early DNA techniques confirmed their identities, including Lillian Harper and Mary O'Connell. Forensic evidence told the grim story. Many had died from blood loss, their wrists slashed in ritual fashion. Others, like Lillian, had been sealed into chambers and left to suffocate. The town's dark secret was finally exposed. Mayor Richard Blackwood confessed that his father and other town leaders had helped Sister Agnes conduct her rituals, believing her promises that sacrificing the unwanted girls would spiritually protect their sons fighting overseas. When some of the nuns tried to stop the final, largest ritual, violence erupted. In the aftermath, with dozens dead, the town leaders made a decision. They would bury the truth along with the victims, sealing them inside hidden chambers and spreading the story of a mysterious disappearance. For 36 years, the families had maintained the secret, their shared guilt binding them in silence. The renovation had been approved only because Richard Blackwood, confronted with his dying father's confession, feared the truth would emerge in other ways. He had hoped to demolish the evidence before anyone could discover it. They saw those girls as expendable, Reed told Dr. Winters as they watched the final remains being carefully removed. Orphans, troubled teens, daughters of poor families who couldn't ask too many questions. And the town believed Sister Agnes could protect their sons through sacrifice? Winters asked skeptically. Desperation makes people vulnerable to terrible ideas, Reed replied. It was wartime. Rationality was in short supply. 6 months later, a memorial service was held. The victims of St. Philomena's finally received proper burial, their names spoken aloud after decades of enforced silence. Detective Reed attended, watching from a distance, as families who had never known the truth finally received closure. After the ceremony, Reed approached the new memorial, a simple stone listing all 50 names. He placed Lillian's restored journal among the flowers and tributes. "They found you," he said softly, "just as you hoped." St. Philomena's Academy was demolished later that year. As the wrecking crew worked, several reported hearing whispers and prayers in the rubble. One worker swore he heard a young girl's voice clear as a bell, saying, "They finally found us." What other historical mysteries would you like us to explore? Subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The truth of St. Philomena's Academy remained a somber reminder of how fear and desperation can lead to unspeakable acts and how secrets buried in darkness will always, eventually, find their way into the light.